Welcome to Classic Motorsport Podcasts. I'm Gareth Thomas, and today we're doing another top 10. Today we're looking at Formula 1 races in the 1980s. Obviously, the last time I did a top 10 of F1 races, it's one race per year, that's the wall. So, starting off at number 10, 1988 Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. Most of the 1988 races were quite dull to watch because the McLaren Hondas won 15 of the 16 races. This race proved to be a dramatic one. Ayrton Senna, who started second, was bogged down and dropped down to at least 14th place, and then went through getting past one by one. And then basically, halfway through the race, Prost was then passed for the lead by Ivan Capelli in a normally aspirated march. Prost obviously was in a McLaren Honda, but Capelli's lead would only last a lap, and then Prost got back through, and then Capelli would have mechanical problems. Senna then passed Prost, went through to win the race, and his first driver's title. I have to say, it was remarkable driving. Obviously, because Senna had a race and a championship doing, and I have to say the McLaren of 88 was pretty much dominant, but quite boring to watch. Number 9, the 1980 United States Grand Prix. No one knew that to be the last at Watkins, Glen, but for the first time since 1951, it was an Alfa Romeo at the front of the grid. It was Bruno Giacometti on the pole, and he dominated more than half the race. But what made it quite interesting was that Aaron Jones, who started, I think it was second or third, overcooked the first corner on the first lap, dropped back to around 12th place, and then went through the field one by one, and then took the lead when Giacometti's engine expired, and just basically fended off teammate Reutemann for victory. It was the last race at Watkins Glen because it was dropped from the 1981 calendar after the track owners at Watkins Glen at the time just basically failed to pay £800,000 to the teams. The race was then instead relocated to the car park of Caesar's Palace, and we all know how bad that was. Number 8, 1989 Brazilian Grand Prix at Jacarepaguá in Rio de Janeiro. The race obviously had a lot of talking points. Mansell to Ferrari, Williams with a new Renault engine, and good McLaren fend off the World Championship. But it was Mansell would end up on top. Though initially he was starting 6th, went up to 3rd after Patrese closed the door on Berger, who in turn took off Senna's front wing, and then Mansell got past Boutsen into 3rd to 2nd, and then past Patrese for the lead. And then when Mansell pitted, he had to get past not just Patrese but Alain Prost, who had also pitted. And then Mansell passed both of them, but then had to pit for a second time, not just for tyres but for a steering wheel change. The Ferraris in 89 had problems with the gearbox because of the semi-automatic gearbox they were using, but Mansell managed to get past Prost to victory. Number 7 on the list has got to be a drive of the century, 1983 United States Grand Prix West at Long Beach. Obviously it was agreed by the track promoters and FOCA President Bernie Eccleston that the 83 United States Grand Prix West would be the last, and that meant it was going to be quite a wild race. Pole sitter Patrick Tambay led away from the start, but a fast start in Rosberg went from 3rd to 2nd and basically challenged Tambay for lap after lap, but took Tambay out by accident, which also took out Rosberg as well. The lead then switched to Jacques Lafitte after the pair collided, but yeah, 2 hard-charging McLarens right behind him of John Watson and Niki Lauda, both started 22nd and 23rd. But Lauda had to let Watson through after Lauda suffered cramp in his leg, and the pair got past Lafitte to get an easy 1-2 finish. After the race, it was revealed that McLaren boss Ron Dennis gave the hand signal to both drivers when the race was going to be started. And it meant goodbye to Formula 1 and hello to IndyCar, as from 1984 onwards, Long Beach hosted the IndyCar series. And it's not the only of Watson's best drives, though, because number 6 has also got another drive from the back to the front, as he did a similar thing the previous year in 1982 in Detroit. And basically started like 17th on the grid, and then there was a red flag after 6 laps when Prix basically pulled over when his turbo caught fire. That meant the race had to be decided on aggregate, and I can tell you, aggregate races are rubbish to watch. But Watson did a splendid drive. At one point, he passed 3 drivers in 1 lap, and then he had to get past leader Keke Rosberg and then build a big lead so that he could win on aggregate, which he did. I'd say it was one of Watson's finest drives and one of the best. Now, number 5. It would have been a lot higher had political problems not interfered, but 1985 South African Grand Prix at Kyalami. Now, 1985 had quite a lot of interesting racing that year, but heading to South Africa there was political tension, not from the governing body, but from the South African government and from other governments, because of political unrest due to apartheid. French teams, which were Ligier and Renault, boycotted in line with the French government's sanctions of South Africa. Most countries tried to prevent drivers from and teams going, and multiple sponsors also ordered teams to remove their branding from cars which they backed, mostly Marlboro, which sponsored McLaren and Ferrari, and Beatrice Food, which sponsored Haas Lola. And that had quite an interesting story in itself. There was basically a story where Aaron Jones, who qualified the Haas Lola, chose not to start, and fate pretty much being ill, so that he didn't race. And basically, the race was quite interesting, as it was mostly a battle between Mansell and Rosberg. And basically, Mansell went on to win, with Rosberg second, after being on a hard charge, with Prost third. Days after the race, Jean-Marie Balestre, who was the president of FISA, announced that the 1986 race would be not held because of apartheid. It won't be till 1992, when apartheid finished, that Formula 1 would return to South Africa. Number 4 on the list is Dallas, 1984. Having a race in Dallas is one thing, but having it on a hot, sweltering July day is not the best choice. And it was basically Nigel Mansell on pole, with teammate Harry DeAngelis alongside. The first time that an all Lotus front row happened since the 1978 Dutch Grand Prix. And I have to say, it was quite hot. And basically, track temperatures rose as high as past 38 degrees C, and I have to say it was really hot. And basically, because the warm-up was held at 7:45am and then cancelled, it was too early for Jacques Lafitte and William, who was driving from Williams, who arrived at the circuit in his pyjamas. However, the day before there was a Can-Am race on the Saturday, 50 laps, but it damaged the track so badly, emergency repairs gone on all night and continued until 30 minutes before the start of the race. Those included a backhoe digging up broken asphalt and replacing it with quick-dry cement. Lauda and Prost tried to arrange a boycott, but Gigi Rosberg said that they should race. Rosberg said, "I don't know what the fuss is about, we're all complaining and bind right up the start time and then we go out and race as usual. We come all the way and the race is all set up, track surface or no surface, you know well, as I do, we'll race." But it was Mansell that led most of the race. Derek Rourke tried to pass Mansell on the outside, but ended up crashing out. And the first five were pretty much together, and then Prost and Lauda made rare errors, and then basically Mansell had gearbox problems, leading to Rosberg passing for victory, with Regnano second after starting the race from last after he stalled his car on a warm-up lap, with De Andres third. But the story doesn't end there. Mansell, who was running fifth, had run out of gears and tried to push his car. He fainted, but was passed by Pinco Gonzalez, who was driving for Osella, but Mansell was given sixth because of a lack of cars still running. Only 8 finishes in the race. It was also known for Martin Brundle having an accident in qualifying, damaging both of his legs, thus ending his 1984 season. There'd be no place like home for the next 2 picks I've chosen. Firstly, 86 British Grand Prix, Brian's Hatch. But first, to Spain, 1981, where I've chosen that as my number 3 pick. So the 81 Spanish Grand Prix at Jarama is number 3 on the list. And at the start, Gilles Villeneuve, who started 7th in a turbo Ferrari, went through to 3rd, and then on lap 2 passed Carlos Watkins for 2nd. And then 20 or so laps into the race leader Alan Jones spun off, and Villeneuve led, but he basically held up most of the cars for the rest of the race, which included Carlos Watkins Williams, Jacques Lafitte's Ligier, John Watson's McLaren, and Adrian Andres' Lotus. And for lap after lap, Villeneuve was holding them up. Fast on straights, but they could not get past him around corners, where the Ferrari was pretty much as slow as a dog. And at the end of the race, 1.2 seconds covered the first 5 cars. That's what you call close racing. And it was quite exciting to watch. But it was the last Spanish Grand Prix there, because in 1982 it was scheduled but cancelled as teams complained about the narrowness of the track. And it was Villeneuve's last win, as he was killed the following year at Zolder, Belgium. Number 2. And number 1 is the No Place Like Home. First off, we're going to Brands Hatch for the 1986 British Grand Prix. The first start was chaotic. Started off with Nigel Mansell having his rear drive shaft explode on him, going into 2nd or 3rd gear, and that caused 7 or 8 cars or so to crash into each other. One of them was Jacques Lafitte, who ended up breaking both his legs, and that ended his driving career. And that took the best part of 2 hours for the race to restart. And at the restart, Mansell had to use the spare car, but the spare car was set up for Nelson Piquet. After being passed by Jacarepaguá at the start, Mansell got through in 2nd, and then when Piquet missed a gear, Mansell took the lead, and for lap after lap fended off Piquet and it was quite a popular one for Mansell and his fans, but it was not so popular for Piquet because his teammate beat him in his own car. And it took Mansell 20 or so laps to get used to driving a car which was set up for Piquet. I have to say, that was good driving. Next one on the list is again a Mansell Piquet moment, 87 British Grand Prix. And that one was worth a fortune. And it was Piquet on pole, Mansell on one side, but at the start it was Prost that took the lead into turn 1, but soon after both Williamses passed him, with Piquet leading Mansell second, and they were both pulling away. And so much was the distance that they lapped the entire field. Unheard of. But at half distance, Mansell pitted because of a vibration, so he was over 23 or so seconds behind and caught Piquet back up, and with like 2 or 3 laps to go, gave him a dummy and went through at Stowe. And he was running on fumes and ran out of fuel on a slowdown lap, and was pretty much blocked by the fans that ran on the track. It was fun to watch because it was so intense whether Mansell chased him or whether Piquet could hold him off, but it was so good to watch Mansell pass Piquet in a way that he did. And that's why that's my number 1 pick of F1 races in the 1980s. If you enjoyed listening to it on audio, remember to follow and like. If you want to subscribe on video, like, subscribe and share for more great content. I'm Gareth Thomas, thank you for watching or listening. Goodbye.